Hello everybody, today we're looking at a game played in the Groningen Chess Festival, but it's from 1993. And why this game is so special is because, well, firstly we've got Ben Finegold with the white pieces, and he's, well, as famous as you can be in the chess world, and George Michelakis, a very mysterious player. If you go into the South African FIDE rating list, you'll see in the inactive players he's still number one, and I think that's even the highest recorded South African rating yet. Someone was please just correct me in the comment section if I'm making too big a statement there, but seriously, a very strong player. And this game is played a year after his famous 1992 tournament, where he was playing in the World Junior tournament, and he managed to lead the tournament at one point and placed third by the end of the tournament. So a year after this, he's playing a game against, well, later to be famous, the Grandmaster Ben Finegold in Groningen. And we have, well, a King's Indian, with Ben Finegold stealing a lot of space here in the center. And they go down theory for quite a while, and, well, b4 now, just more space. I highlighted that to show you guys how much space there's on the queen side. But how Michelakis plays against this is very key, and this is kind of the theory. So the knight goes away, and then f5 to start hitting at the pawn structure, and then c6. And a lot of these things happen. g3 now just prevents the knight from coming into f4, and I'm just showing a bit of theory. So if the knight were to be on f4 and traded for this bishop with the pawn still here, black wouldn't mind recapturing with the pawn on e5, because then the bishop's eyes open up on, well, this beautiful diagonal. So g3 prevents that, and then simply f5, hitting at that center, and a very hyper-modern line where black's only develops really in the middle game. We didn't have knight g5, and now knight f6. The pawn, the knight's not doing anything on h5 anymore, so it's going to sit behind the pawn. It's not going to impede on the pawn's development. So pretty clear there. And then f3, just backing up this huge center that white has claimed, and f4, making kind of the same point as the knight going to f4, that, well, okay, if there's a trades, the g file is going to open potentially on white's king, and also this long diagonal is going to be available for black's bishop. So that's left, and king g2, and this also helps the knight to be able to retreat to h3, potentially f2, and okay, we still have theory. We have c6, and this also, I was showing earlier, it's a move that strikes at white's center. And now, in 1993, as far as I can tell, b5 by Ben Finegold was a novelty. Other moves could include rook b1, and I don't know, I think there's a different way to attack at this center. I think white might be aiming to play c5, but then again, I'm not a great theoretician here. I would have tried something like this, and then c5. It feels like after the move in the game b5, that the whole structure of the game changes, and it seems to start suiting black. c5, and we've got this massive pawn chain by black, and if white really wants to open it up, this dark squared bishop becomes open. So white's probably going to keep it closed. And then we start noticing, well, it's going to be a game of knights and what the knights get up to. So black's knights still have potential for finding better squares, and okay, both pairs of knights do. But I'm already spotting some nice outposts for black's knights, and I think this is kind of the main idea Michelakis uses throughout the game. We have queen d3, knight e8. Already the knights start maneuvering, and now knight e6. Probably not totally necessary, but Ben Finegold gives up a pawn after bishop takes e6, d takes e6. And his idea is to play against this weakened d6 pawn. And I think he misses the following idea from Michelakis. So, well, just take a look at the position. Sorry, I'll unhighlight these annoying highlights. And these two knights, just watch their move now. Knight c7. After rook d1, simply knight c8. So you've shifted their weight from the king side to the queen side, where already this feels like a great square for this knight. And okay, this knight has to defend the pawn for now, but this knight is also keeping an eye on this pawn. So already black has done some major work with these knights, and this is actually just such an easy maneuver. It felt like so much has actually changed in the position. e7, just giving away that pawn, knowing, well, it's going to be lost in any case, and not inviting that knight to e6 immediately, where it will find a fantastic home on d4. So we have knight d5 challenging, well, the brilliant knight with tempo against the queen. Knight takes d5, and now queen takes d5 check, king h8, and g4. And the point is this pawn is still being attacked by white, and well, you don't want to move away the knight just yet to attack the queen. I don't know why this is highlighted. Sorry. We have bishop f6 now by black, and a4, launching an attack on the other side of the board. Bishop h4, and now Michelakis sets up a pretty nice idea. The idea is to kind of fix this pawn on the square for now, and maybe then attack through h5, because if you go h3, then this becomes an excellent outpost for the bishop. So it's not too possible. But instead, maybe instead of bishop h4, it would have been more precise to, to go a5 instead of bishop h4, and just stop this development. And if the pawn is taken, just simply rook takes a6. You might want to jump into the square immediately, but with the rook on a8, and well, let's just show it. After a5 and this captures, you might want to jump in here immediately, but still, two sets of your pawns are hanging, so you can't do that. So rook takes a6, and the a pawn is very weak now, and this pawn is defended on d6, and the knight can suddenly find a very nice square, potentially yet again on this e4 outpost. We have, well, okay, after bishop h4, a5 by white himself, since black isn't going to be playing it. And now rook b8, getting off of that diagonal, preparing to play b6, not dropping that knight, and preparing to meet one of white's pawn advances. We have bishop b2 and rook f6, and this kind of frees up this knight on c8, and Ben Finegold allows this knight to come into the open after a6, knight b6, queen d3 now, and h5. And this is actually quite a cool point. If the g file has to open, let's say g takes h5, and rook g1, white trying to play for the g file, you can just kind of notice that, okay, even after the king's gone, how many squares black can utilize on this file, potentially 4, and white can only manage two squares on the file. So black's definitely going to win this battle. So h5 makes a lot of sense, starting to attack well, white's king side, and also still you've got the bishop here in case the h pawn moves. You've got a takes b7 and just simply rook takes b7, and now h3, and h3 now allows black to go into the square, but it's kind of saying, okay, well, you get g3, but I get the h1 square for my rook, with potentially the h file. And maybe it wasn't the best of trades, positionally speaking, but okay, it happened. Rook e6 now, preparing to bring the queen in, and well, okay, maybe shutting, or just defending the pawn. And communication with the bishop is now clear. g5 square is also available. We'll see that's an important square after rook h1, after bishop g3. And one important point to notice is it's still going to take two moves to challenge this bishop. So you really need to decide if you want to use that time. And then also after h4, you might ask yourself, what's the point? Black's still going to be the one with the knight left in the closed position. So maybe keep around the pieces. We have h4 now, the second pawn sacrificed by Ben Finegold, and simply bishop takes h4. But his idea was to open up the file. We have bishop c3 now. Now maybe trying to challenge this bishop, because you're not just shoving it away with your rook. So it's aiming for e1, and now just bishop g3 going back to this excellent square. We have rook a6, and okay, sorry for all the arrows, but I think Ben Finegold realizes that after bishop e1 and h4 is completely possible, although after bishop captures only f captures is possible, but then you can go g5, and then you've got this pawn trio over here, and potentially, and these are what the last arrows are showing, the queen and the rook are going to be playing on the f file, with the knight still being around, one of the main points. So the plan has changed. Instead, Ben Finegold goes after this a7 pawn, potential c6 square, and some sack exchange ideas if he can play very quickly or something, I don't know. So rook a6. Now just king g7, stepping off of that back rank, so maybe if there's a sack exchange, no tempos on the 8th rank. We have bishop a5, going off that knight, that brilliant knight, which just keeps on maneuvering and slipping out of white's hands. Knight d7. And, okay, now you can maybe ask yourself, white's down 2 pawns already. The d file is sorted out. It seems like the h file is sorted out. What is white going to get up to? rook c6, trying to play for that back rank. This seems to be his compensation. We have knight f6, this knight keeps developing, and queen f7 now. Maybe just rook d7 would have also been fine, just to stop any play on that d8 square. Queen f7 also totally fine. It also clears way for this rook to enter again. Maybe this is too cloggy for him, so he wants to play economically with his pieces and step out of this tempo and keep on to the knight. So the knight will have a square to move to. After queen f7, bishop d8, we see that knight h7, and the knight has managed to come all the way over here. I think that's the route it took. Still such a slippery knight, and we have g5 now. The third pawn, Ben Finegold's giving up. And, well, okay, this not immediately giving it up. You need to realize that your minor piece on the other side of the board is defending it, but black is simply going to attack that minor piece. He goes after g5. Black plays rook d7, but I think after rook d7, I think the move is queen d5. But queen d5 is a good idea, but I think without g5 in the position, it's even better. So going queen d5 immediately. And then rook d7. White can try rook c7. Well, maybe not. Sorry, this is an idea I got wrong just now. Sorry, queen d5 is fine. There's a line with queen d5 where you, I think, trade down. So let's say after h4. Oh, yeah, this is the line. So after h4, just closing down black's side of the board, you've got queen takes b7. And this little tactic, queen takes b7 and rook c7 check. White manages to go into an endgame, even though the knight's still around. This could still suit him. It's still pretty closed, and you've still got the minors. I think to really convert it, you might still need the queen around as black. Maybe another rook. But in any case, so this was just the point. Queen d5 immediately instead of g5. But g5 on the board, the third pawn, Ben Finegold's giving away. And now rook d7. Hitting this minor piece that is now defending the pawn, just going after the third pawn actually. The plan is rook e8, and then this piece is not going to survive. So we have queen d5 now, and now rook e8. Prepared to go for this, but queen a8, and suddenly white is on the 8th rank, which seems to have been his dream all along. We have queen f8 now, and the best line possibly for white now is to go into this endgame, starting with check, and after the trade, king f7. Just defending the piece. The rook can't go anywhere because this allows an attack on the queen. So you need to trade down, and after this trades, giving a check just allows the king to go to, allows the king to take on f6, and white's fine, black's fine. So you want to try and play like this, but even this is just losing for black. So it's losing, but it's not as bad as what Ben Finegold went for. But sometimes you need to choose obscurity versus clearness, even though clearness seems to favor you. So instead of going into this forcing trade into a worse endgame, Ben Finegold tries to keep the game tricky with rook a1. But this is apparently a blunder, because just simply rook e takes d8, and now rook takes a7. The idea was to get into the 7th rank, but simply queen takes a7 check, and just king g8. And now after rook c7, white is down another minor piece, and nothing's going to happen here. And George makes exactly that point. Knight takes g5. And you can see now there's not a check even. The queen can recapture. The square isn't available. So b6, and we see one last resource tried by Ben Finegold, and this is actually very, very sneaky. We have knight takes c7, bishop takes c7, and it started with this bishop f1 maneuver. Rook c8, just stopping this pawn. But now black is up a full rook, and we have queen b7, but white has one idea left. Queen e8 now, king g1, queen d7, just going after this pawn, which walks into bishop h3. And here's the idea. Queen takes h3, queen d5, check, king h8, and now queen takes e5, check. And this should not be highlighted, because you need to ask yourself, now what are you doing as black in this situation? Do you want to capture the queen or not? And I think maybe if you missed this in the game, your heart might be stopping right now. But obviously George did not. He just very coolly played king h7. If you took the queen, it's just stalemate on the spot. Nothing for white to do. All the pawns are blocked. But king h7 and even a queen sacrifice allows this pawn to move now. So very, very cute idea in the end by Ben Finegold. And the only way to have tried this really, and you need to notice this, is when he went bishop f1, where was this bishop actually meant to go? The squares were all closed. A very, very instructive game by a South African legend, a bit of an unsung legend, I think, having major victories and international wins. We're going to go through a lot more of his games. I'm very excited. He's played some amazing chess. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't, to keep up to date with new games. I will post content regularly, and enjoy your night. Thanks for watching.